Game day.
Welcome everybody to the next episode of Chiefs Focus First and 10 Live. We're with JP and Quentin. We just had a little technical difficulty. I don't know what happened there. It decided to run two of the intros at the exact same time. That was very strange. I pulled a Nick Wright. Nick did that one time, and he had like three intros going and his exit video at the same time. He didn't know what to do. He just sat there with this look on his face like he was bewildered, but whatever.
I did that at my radio show once, so, live and learn.
Hey, man, I don't know what happened. It just decided to run to it one time. Very
Sometimes you just got to let it do its thing.
Got to let it do what it wanted to do. So, what's up, Thiz? We got Thiz, we got Will, we got everybody in this joint. Will says, hello, I'm listening from work. It's all right. So I know Thiz is too, so you guys are loyal as hell. Thiz is actually is with Chiefs Focus, which is awesome. We got a few things to go over. Let's go over this Frank Clark situation really quick, because there's a lot of chatter on Twitter, a lot of dumbass things going on in the fucking group chats that I somehow got stuck in that I wish I wasn't in. People said, why don't we just cut him? What's the dead cap hit? It's $9.2 million. You don't want to cut him. You don't want to do anything with it. You want to restructure him and bring him back. That's what they're doing. That's what they're working on right now. We've been saying this for weeks, and apparently nobody listened, but that's exactly what they're doing right now. Chris Jones is in the middle of an extension, from everything I've heard. He's been in actually that was actually in the works prior to the Super Bowl to some degree. So we're in good shape there. Orlando Brown, really quick, going to be tagged. If they're going to tag him and work out a deal later on. What I was told today, which was just kind of off the wall, is that he is not, at least from what their perspective is, he's not being as difficult as he was last year. So, turned down a 6-year, $139 million deal, I think it was, that we offered him last year. So, I have to believe that he's probably not being as difficult to work with. With that being said, great news, which we all knew. We talked about at the beginning of the season. When they brought Matt Nagy back, we knew exactly why he was coming back. He is now officially the OC. And they're bringing up, I can't think of his name right now. Quentin, we just talked
David
about
Girardi.
David Girardi. They're going to move him up to the quarterback coach position from what I've heard, which is not a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. Do you? Do you think it's a bad thing?
I think, you're keeping guys in-house, right? You know these guys, you trust these guys. Yeah. He has, this guy, he's been here. I think he's been here since the Alex Smith days. So he's been here for a while. And this is how Andy Reid runs his system, right? He brings people up. He promotes within. Very rarely does he go out of house, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You see that on the defense, right, where he'll go out of house. But on the offensive side of the ball, the Kansas City, since he's been here, is very big. Promote within, build guys up. Doug Peterson, Matt Nagy, right? I mean, this is how things work in the Andy Reid system. So, yeah, I've got full confidence in him. If the organization thinks that he's going to be good at that, then there's no reason for me to think that he is not qualified or will be a bad influence on Patrick Mahomes whatsoever.
Look, man, the guy, he already has his repertoire with the Chiefs, as you said. I don't think it's, if anybody had a problem with it, it wouldn't be happening. So I don't think it's going to be an issue for anyone, for that matter. Nagy's happy with it. I'm happy with Nagy being here. He brings a perspective that we need. I mean, he's not only a great play caller, but he also is a great mind. He's got a great mind when it comes to drawing up plays. He just knows what he's doing.
He was the OC during Alex Smith's best year.
Yes, and he did a great job with him. There were some other breakdowns that year that just, and look, I love Alex Smith. I think he was one of the greatest quarterbacks we ever had.
I mean, it's a short list.
It's a very short list. So, you got Lynn Dawson, Trent Green, Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes. I mean,
Well, you want to throw Joe Montana in there?
oh well, I forgot about Joe, but I mean he was only here a couple of years, and he was already injured, and he did bring us to a place where nobody else did, but he wasn't like a long term quarterback. Um, and I like Joe; he's a great guy. But anyway, Alex just didn't have that that it factor to get you over the hump. Um, I think he could have if he didn't spend all those years in San Francisco under that regime. I think that kind of hurt him.
I think
But
he is a great example of. I think Geno Smith was sort of following that arc,
mm-hmm.
but never got the opportunity at another place right away like Smith did.
I agree. I
So,
agree. I agree.
um, in terms of Frank Clark, just to jump back at some of the stuff you brought up right away,
Yeah.
that doesn't surprise me. This is something we've been talking about because let's go into a hypothetical world where Frank Clark gets cut, right? Well, you're down $9 million, and now you have to find somebody to play defensive end and significant snaps, right? We got to remember that Frank Clark hasn't been the most effective pass rusher in the league by any means. He's disappointed a lot of Chiefs fans in that regard, but he's an effective player on the field. He's not a guy that, guys break through his tackles, or he's not a bad player on the field at all. So if you cut him, you lose $9 million, and you have to fill a roster spot. And it's easy just to say, well, you can draft somebody to take his spot, but that's not how defensive end works. If you're going to have a guy play significant snaps right away, you have to be within the top 15. I mean,
Absolutely.
even George Karlaftis, excuse me, when he was playing for this team, he got eased into the system because if you're not that top elite talent, it doesn't transition right away into the NFL. That's why it took Karlaftis towards the end of the year, really in December, for him to really pick up the defense and to get to the speed of the game. So bringing back Frank Clark, I feel like if you end up paying him $14 million over the next, $14 million a year over the next 2 seasons, 3 seasons, I think that works for everybody because he makes more money instead of being cut, and the Chiefs will at that point literally cut his cap hit in half.
Yeah, and you don't want to. And Frank doesn't want to end up in a situation similar to like Carlos Dunlap is. You make $4 or $5 million to play out a couple. The last 2 or 3 years of your career. I just, Frank loves it here. He's made that very clear. In fact, when we interviewed him, he talked about it and he just loved it here. But if you consider, all these people, just we should cut him. We don't want him back. Blah blah blah. Man, just because the guy didn't have 15 sacks doesn't mean he doesn't do his job. He's there's so many other factors to his game, and for somebody that went through what he went through, and to still be able to play at the level that he plays at, I'm very happy that he's coming back. I hope he comes back. I should say.
Yeah,
From what I understand, it's about a 90% deal. There's always that 10%, but they said it's a 90%er.
and whoever the Chiefs end up picking in the draft, and there's a good chance that the Chiefs end up drafting even 2 defensive ends.
Yeah,
If it's anything like what he did with Karlaftis, he's going to help these guys out, and that's invaluable for a young
it
guy.
is. Look what Frank Dunlap and Chris Jones did for Karlaftis this year. I mean, he would have never gotten to the level that he got to if it wasn't for those guys. And Frank, I think, he spearheaded the whole thing.
Yeah, well,
He
when
led the
Caleb and I
charge.
went to camp, we saw him. Camp was over. Everybody was going back they were walking up the hill. The crowd was starting to disperse, and there's Frank Clark and Karlaftis staying on the field.
Yeah,
So we saw that. Caleb and I did in person, him working with him. And I know Karlaftis has talked about, what Frank Clark specifically did for him, early in the year and helping him out. And that's just from what we can see. You can imagine that even on in the film room, that expands even more. So I think it's those sort of things that some maybe, a lot of times it's behind closed doors, so we don't see it a lot. And players deserve more credit for it, and we should be extremely vocal about it and give credit where credit is due when things like that happen. Because Frank Clark doesn't have to take his time out of practice or out of his day to help out the other guys, but he does. And it definitely is one of the reasons why the Chiefs won a Super Bowl, because
Absolutely.
Karlaftis was a productive player towards the home stretch of the season, and I think Frank Clark has a lot to do with it. And so bringing back Frank Clark is bringing back that veteran presence on a deal that works for both him and Kansas City. Like I said, you're not going to, it's not like you're going to pay him league minimum, right? It's still going to be $12-14 million a year, but he ends up making more money out of the deal, because if he doesn't restructure this contract, the Chiefs are going to have to cut him. They cannot carry a $30 million cap hit on Frank Clark next year. So this deal is going to get done. It's going to get restructured. Frank Clark is not playing on this current deal for next season.
No, he's not. There's been a lot of chatter out there about different players, that we need a backup quarterback. We, one of our guys put out some scenarios, hypotheticals. People lost their minds over it, as they do on Twitter. One of them was Carson Wentz. That was the biggest one that they lost their minds over. The one thing I will say about Carson Wentz is this. The guy, there's reports out there that he's hard to deal with. He's hard to work with. He's locker room issues. Doesn't want to be coached. He doesn't seem like that type of person to me. I don't know if he is or isn't. I'm not in the locker room. But there's been a report supposedly from one individual that put out a post, supposed to be an insider with Philadelphia, and he said that was one of the main reasons why they cut him. Well, that's not really the truth, because he left. He wanted out. He was done with the Philadelphia fan base. He watched what happened to his head coach, and he just wanted out. He needed a new seat. He needed a change. He needed a change. They brought up the fact that they had a great offensive line. So did the Colts, but he still couldn't do what they expected him to do. Well, you have to look at two things. One, strength of schedule with Philadelphia. Yes, they look like on paper that they've got the best defensive line, the best offensive line in football. But we proved that wrong. Now, if you look at the Colts, they had no real weapons for him. I mean, they had a great running back, but they haven't had a quarterback do any good since 17. You're talking about, I think they've went through 4 now. 3 or 4.
Let's see. They had post-Luck. They had Jacoby Brissett.
Then they had
Rivers, Wentz, Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan, that's 4. That's 4 quarterbacks since 2017. Okay, so how does anybody not take that into consideration? If you're going from one bad situation to another, it's pretty hard to establish yourself as a great quarterback. Then he went to Washington. The story is that he was hard to work with there. Who knows if he is or isn't? Washington is another dumpster fire. I mean, look at the team right now. You got an owner in Snyder that has blocked Jeff Bezos from bidding on the team for personal reasons. Supposedly, he thinks that Bezos, since he bought the Washington Post in 2013, has been trying to get him ousted from the NFL and ousted from Washington. Well, regardless, if you got 31 other owners, well, let me take that back, 29 other owners that don't want you in the NFL and owning a team, I don't know how he's the highest bidder there. Are you going to take less money from somebody else and then they may not even get approved to buy the team? Or are you just going to say, okay, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just an idiot. I mean, I've proven I am for the last 15, 20 years, so maybe I should just walk away and let the man buy the team. But right now, you put a block on him. So it's one of those things to where Washington it's almost like we always used to say about the Texans. People go there to waste their careers. And I hate to say that because we just watched Eric Bieniemy go there. maybe he could be that turning point. I'm sure he assumed that Bezos was buying the team and the team was going to be sold quickly. Well, right now, as far as Bank of America is concerned, Bezos is blocked. So, uh, I don't know, man. It's just weird how that all worked out. But the one thing I will say is that Carson Wentz came out of the gates very strong. He wasn't a horrible quarterback. He's had some pretty bad situations he's been put in. And it may leave a bad taste in your mouth, and maybe you are a jerk off because of it. It's not the first time it's happened. He doesn't seem like an arrogant guy. I mean,
I think his biggest problem is sort of he has that F it, we ball moment, where it's just like, I'm down. I gotta get all the points back in this one play, and he'll just let it fly.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times he makes just a lot of dumb mistakes, quite frankly. I do think that I do think there is some validity to those reports that he didn't seem to be the best in the locker room, because, that's also why they got rid of him in Indianapolis. Those reports became very public in Indianapolis as well. So it's just tough for me to believe that there's nothing to that when you have that coming out from two different cities. If it was one, then you can say, well, either he was bad in the locker room and now he's fixed it, or you could say, well, maybe it wasn't true to begin with. But, when it happens in two different situations, two totally different situations, right? You're going from one of the hardest places to play in Philadelphia to, quite frankly, a very Kansas City-esque city like Indianapolis, right? A very, middle of the country, not a big media market, still a metropolitan area, right? So, but not a media market that's going to attack its players the way Philadelphia, New York, LA does. So for reports to come out of there as well, it's just hard for me to believe. And quite frankly, I don't know if there was enough, room in the newspaper to report on what is happening with Carson Wentz over in Washington. So
it was weird because I hadn't heard that other than basically that one report that I had read. I still haven't heard a player come out and say anything. So I don't know.
But on the other hand, you also haven't heard a player come out in his defense. And I think that speaks out just as much, too, because there are a lot of times where we'll hear, like Russell Wilson, for example, right? Like it would be if you had players coming out in his defense talking about how good of a locker room or leader he was, right? You have Marshawn Lynch and the cornerback, the Richard Sherman, coming out and talking about the problems they had with Russell Wilson, but you don't have the opposite of that either. Sometimes the things that aren't said speak just as loudly as those that are. And sure. The fact that nobody's come out in his defense with those reports that are coming out either makes me, question it too. So there is that, I think, that needs to be considered. I personally, I don't really want Carson Wentz here in Kansas City just because of that itself. But I'm also, I'm not going to throw a fit if, Andy Reid brings him in. And obviously they would have to have a conversation about it. And they said, hey, you coming here, you're the backup, right? There's absolutely zero chance that you're becoming the starting quarterback. And maybe this is a reclamation time, you can get the opportunity to sit behind Patrick Mahomes, and after being here a year, people might forget about your past a little bit, and you can go get an opportunity. Sort of like what happened with Mitch Trubisky, right? He spent a whole year up in Buffalo, and then he got an opportunity to go and play for Pittsburgh, and he got started a couple games in Pittsburgh. So I think something like that could happen with Carson Wentz, where if he comes here to Kansas City, he sits for a year. God forbid he has to play a game, but, you go to whatever quarterback needy team that's going to come next offseason, because people will be like, oh, well, he was with Kansas City. We didn't hear anything about that. Maybe he learned a thing. We'll take a shot on him, and he can compete for a starting job in 2 years.
Well, I look at the quarterbacks out there that are floating around right now. You've got Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota that everybody seems to be really high on. I don't mind Marcus Mariota. I mean, if it was my choice and they actually were wanting they didn't want to promote Bouchel, which I think that's where they're going to go with anyway. And they didn't want to promote him. I really believe he's going to be the backup, but I would go Marcus Mariota in a heartbeat. And I say that because he's a better quarterback. And I think he has in a good system behind a great quarterback with a great quarterbacks coach. in Matt Nagy and Andy Reid, I think he could really step up his game. He wasn't horrible. He was never horrible. He just had some rough stints. Look at the team he played for. Again, it wasn't the best situation. In fact, when he was backing up Derek Carr, when Carr got hurt, he came in and played lights out. I mean, he really did. So we'll have to see where it plays out. I still think Shane is going to end up being the backup. They wouldn't have kept him as long as they have. They wouldn't have protected him as long as they did if they didn't want him as a backup. It would just make no sense. Now, if you figure like maybe a Drew Lock or Chase Daniel or somebody like that wants to come in and be third fiddle, that's a different story.
Chase Daniel is my hero, by the way.
Hey man, the guy's played for like how many teams has he played for now? 16? I don't know. He's played for every team in the NFL, it feels like. But it is what it is. He's not a bad, horrible quarterback. I don't think he's ever gotten the real opportunity to play the game the way he, to learn the game, I should say. But look, regardless, all the speculation and the crap that goes on some of these podcasts and some of this rhetoric on Twitter, you can't buy into most of it because it's exactly what it is. It's just a bunch of armchair GMs that want to put out stuff that really doesn't make any sense, like cutting Frank Clark. Moving on from that.
Chase Daniels played for six organizations.
Yeah.
Saints, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Saints again, Bears, Lions, Chargers. And if you look at like the numbers he's made, it's something. I had this conversation with my father a while ago. It's something like he's made $250,000 per completed pass or something like that. Like, he's made so much money holding the clipboard. And hey, ain't nothing wrong with holding the clipboard. Okay,
hey man,
I got no problem with it.
A lot of people would love to make Look, Nick Foles was a $20 million clipboard holder at one time. So let's let's not forget about that. Whatever happens. Now let's get into this defensive thing really quick because it's frustrating as too. We keep hearing all these people talk that we should just dump Snead and move on because there's so much talent in the draft right now that we shouldn't sign Snead to anything, and he's not elite. That's something that I almost I want to smack this kid through the phone. First of all, I don't know what he considers elite, because you could take, if you counted every cornerback in the league right now, you could probably say there's top three CBs. I mean, there's three players that you could say are 100% elite. Then you can look back and go, okay, these guys are good. Snead, for all intents and purposes, is a top 8 corner in this league. Maybe even better. He just continues. He's very intelligent. He's not a penalty freak. He doesn't, look at his penalties. Look at his penalty ratio. It's so minimal, it's pathetic. I can't imagine anyone saying he's not elite and we don't need him. That's one of the things that just blew my mind. Turnover is one thing. I understand we got really lucky with McDuffie. We got really lucky even with Jalen. But you can't. That luck is not always going to be there. It's a gamble. Every time you go into the draft, it's a gamble. So, I mean, you might as well just put your money on a freaking roulette table, because you never know what you're going to end up with. And one of the points they tried to make, well, what if he gets injured? Okay, well, how many college guys that came out their first year and got injured? Happens all the time. So that's another what if. You just can't base everything off that, because if you did, you wouldn't have anybody on your team, especially anybody of any talent. I truly believe he needs to come back. He knows the system very well. I think he's going to probably draw between. I think he'd probably warrant about $14 million a year. I think he would actually take less to play in Kansas City. I don't see him being the guy that just wants every dollar right now. He's making too much money going to Super Bowls, making too much money going to the playoffs. Any money he's going to make up, if we offered him 13, even 12 for that matter, on a 4-year deal, and he made it to the playoffs all 4 of those years, which he will, and say out of those 4 years he made it to the Super Bowl 2 more times, he just made his money back. He made the difference. Why would you not sign him? Somebody even compared him to Ward. And I love Tarvarius Ward. But Snead's better.
I think Snead was one of the reasons why they felt okay walking away from Ward.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm going to push back. Up front. Here's what I'm going to say up front, and I'm going to need you to just listen.
Oh, I'll listen.
I also think that Snead is a future part of the Chiefs' plan moving forward. I think Snead's going to be one of those pieces that the Chiefs look to build around for the future. With that being said, I don't think it's crazy to have the conversation about whether or not the Chiefs should look to trade Snead.
This year?
Yes. Because I said listen.
I'm listening. I'm just trying to find my gun.
I think that if it comes out in the next, month, right before the draft, that Kansas City has traded Snead, then I would wait to see the compensation before I freaked out, because I think that if you can get enough back for him, I think it's worth it. I will say it does have to be a lot, because even in a situation where the Chiefs don't up signing him long term at the end of next season, him walking away in free agency is worth a compensatory pick, right? And he'll probably be worth a top compensatory pick, which means that's the 3rd round pick. So the starting has got to be more than a 3rd round pick off the bat, because we're going to trade him. We need to be compensated for that. And then the fact that you would get a year of play before you had to extend him means that we would give him more compensation back for that. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a 1st round pick, but it could be one of those, like, it's the equivalent of a 1st round pick with just the amount of picks that we get. So I also will say this on top of that. Kansas City's done a great job in finding corners over the past, really the Veach era. I don't think it's a fluke to be able to go through and find as many quality corners as you have all throughout the round, right? We found guys in the 1st round at McDuffie and the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds with Veach, right? So I think how to scout that position, and a lot of these guys are coming from smaller schools that are going to end up falling in the draft to begin with. So if you know that there's a guy that you want to go after that you feel like is more of that safety hybrid role, which is what Snead plays, then I feel like that, yeah, Snead could be up for a trade value in order to acquire a good haul of picks back moving forward. Because if you're Kansas City, you can't afford to give, these you can't afford to pay everybody. And if this is one of the guys that you don't end up have to pay, and instead you can get a bunch of draft assets back, I think that's a good position moving forward. Do you at least see where I'm coming from?
I do see where you're coming from. I get it. I guess my whole thing is, it's really difficult to find that one guy that can, he's valuable in the fact that he can teach other rookies how to play this position. No matter how you look at it, in every position that you have, you need to have one veteran, somebody that's really good, that can actually help the other ones, as we've talked about with defensive line. We've talked about it with wide receivers. We've talked about it with running backs, even for that matter. It's no different than it is with corners. A corner is the 2nd hardest position to play in football. And if you don't have somebody out there that can actually teach that position and teach it well, it's going to be difficult for anybody that comes into this league and not be a flag master. that doesn't draw every penalty on the planet. I mean, we watched Bershon, as much as I love Breland, he got that stigma because he drew a couple flags and pissed off a couple of refs. Next thing you know, he's getting flagged and the ball's not even on the same side of the damn field. He's 5 yards away from the guy and he gets flagged. So the one thing I could say about Snead is that he is very, very intelligent, very regimented, and he stays away from that penalty stuff, but he can still make the plays. And that's something that's hard to find. Usually you have a Marcus Peters, or you have somebody, Olay. I know you're coming at me, but you sure as hell ain't hitting me. Just here's, let me put my red flag up and let you go right on by. Or you end up with a Rashad Breeland that gets pissed off, and then next thing you know, he's pissing off refs. He's got a bad stigma, and then goes from there. Or then you have a guy like Ward, you have a guy like Snead that don't draw as many penalties and are very effective. That's what I see. Snead, I think, is better because he's great with the corner blitzes, reads everything. I think his knowledge and his the way he plays the game is invaluable, in my opinion.
Okay, you ready for this hot take?
I'm ready for it.
Because it might be steaming. I mean, you might get burnt with it. I think that Brian Cook can replace the Snead safety blitz next season. If Snead's not on this roster, I think he can replace it because we saw how well he did in coverage, because he got put in some pretty awkward situations with coverage, and he was effective. He's already a safety, and really that's what Snead spent a lot of his time in college playing safety. In fact, he only played his last season as a corner. So he had most of his experience in terms of college was playing safety, and he only moved to corner his last season at his senior year. If you can take a Cook and who is competent in playing that coverage role, you can put him man-to-man on guys, or at least make it look like it, and then send him on those slot blitzes.
I agree. There's always a what if. Like I said, that's a gamble with whatever you do. I would just like, I still like to have that one veteran presence there. Somebody
Thanks, Fizz.
What'd this say?
He's agreeing with me.
What did he say? He said, it's not a hot take of a take as I thought it would be. You're right. I feel like the veteran presence is a huge thing to me, but.
Well, and I would push back on that too a little bit on this. I would say that, you still have Justin Reed who's in the defensive back room, right? So you still have somebody back there who is able to command and tell guys what they need to do in the backfield if you need that. And, you have a cornerback coach. So I do think that I'm not necessarily advocating for it, but I don't think it's the worst decision if the Chiefs end up doing it, because I think there's a lot of good that can come out of it, especially if you end up trading him and getting a lot of assets for the 2024 draft, right? The Chiefs have 11 draft picks going into this draft. You don't necessarily need any more for this year's draft, but if you want to continue to be this top elite team and win Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes taking up damn near a quarter of your salary cap, you need rookie guys. And the best way to find good rookies in the draft is to just have more picks than most people. So if you're going to be able to do that and you can trade for 2024 picks, and I think that's a good way to go. And I would not be upset if Snead ends up getting traded, which I know I might. I'm definitely pissing off one of my friends because he bought a Snead jersey. So I don't think it's as crazy as a take as some people think.
It's not. I don't think it's a crazy take. I just don't know if it's a great idea. I completely understand what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense. I wasn't really happy when they traded Ward, to be honest with you.
Well, he walked in free agency.
I understand, but they could have signed him. He wanted to stay. They just didn't want to give him $14 million a year. But
can't pay everybody.
No, you can't. But again, I wasn't really happy with it because I didn't know what they were getting in the draft. I had no idea that they were going to pull the people that they pulled out of that draft class. I knew they were good, but I didn't think they were going to transition into the NFL that well.
Yeah, I do believe that one of those compensatory picks the Chiefs have is the Travarius Ward
I think so
draft,
too. Yeah.
or one of those. I think we have an extra third round pick because of him going
Yeah.
to San Francisco.
Yeah.
So we kind of got something back for him.
We did. We did. Um,
It'll be
and
interesting to
he's played
see.
well there. He's played well there. I mean, he
Yeah,
really has.
he's a good corner. He's a good corner. He's not great. He's not elite. He is a solid. If I put you out there, I believe that you are not going to make a stupid mistake and blow this game. That's
He's
what he
very
is,
consistent.
and that's super valuable, especially at the corner position. Like you brought up,
Absolutely.
it is easily the second hardest position on an NFL football field.
Yeah.
Obviously, quarterback's one, but corner is after that because you're going against arguably the most athletic people in all of American sports, the NFL wide receiver.
Yeah. And not
And
only that,
you're not allowed
You're
not
watching.
allowed to touch them. You're not allowed to tug at them.
Yeah.
Just ask the Eagles. So
Zinger.
so you know there's so much that you can't do. A lot of the times, you're a smaller person in general, right? If you're the general rule of thumb is that if you're 6'4" and can catch a ball, you're playing wide receiver, and if you're 5'11" and can't catch a ball, you're playing corner. So a lot of times these guys are just physics are on their side as well. And then, of course, they know what the play is, so they know what they're doing, but you don't know what they're going to do. So the entire just system is built up against the cornerback, and the fact that there are top guys out there, I mean it truly is there's a reason that when corners make a play, they're allowed to talk as much smack as they do because it's so difficult to do.
Well, I mean, you think about it, dude. They're watching the quarterback's eyes. They're watching footwork. They're watching two or three. They're at least two wide receivers. They're watching running backs, and they're also playing against the refs. The refs got a flag in their hand, ready to throw it on a corner all day long. Now, this year wasn't nearly as bad as it's been in previous years because they made them lighten up a little bit, depending on.
What's weird about that though is that when we were at training camp, Caleb and I were at training camp, there was an emphasis. They had one of the days we were there, they had the one of the NFL refs going around, and the illegal contact was the big emphasis going into the NFL season. I'm actually surprised that we didn't see more illegal contact throughout the season, and maybe that's just because the roughing the passer took over the headlines. So we were bitching more about that than anything else. But once again, it just shows that the cornerback position is not easy at all.
Well, Girardi is the new quarterbacks coach, by the way. So apparently it's a done deal. I didn't see it. I was busy all day. Must have just happened here recently, but he is the new quarterbacks coach from what somebody reported just a little bit ago. Anyway, I agree. I just, again, I still like to have some veteran presence there, but that's just me. I'm old school when it comes to that stuff. But it seems like these guys are coming out of the gates with. I mean, look what we did. I mean, look what we ended up with. Now I still think some of our, Snead was a big help to some of these guys. I mean, it's proven with other positions on the field, with other players, Karlaftis, guys like that. Even for that matter, I mean, you can look at like Pacheco. He watched what McKinnon did. He learned from McKinnon, and he learned how to be patient. Learned how to find the holes. Just different things that he learned how to do. So I just feel like sometimes that veteran presence is always good to have, as long as you can get somebody that'll play within your system and play on a team-friendly deal and a player-friendly deal. And it looks like to me, everybody says, well, all these players are, they're going towards, they all want the bag. They all want the bag. It doesn't seem like that may be for some teams, for some players. But we don't really have that issue as much as we had 3 years ago. I don't think we have it as much as we had it 2 years ago, even maybe last year. Simply because I think when they saw Tyreek Hill get traded, arguably the best wide receiver, one of the best in the league, if not top two, definitely the most dangerous, these players thought, oh shit, okay, well, they're going to trade him off because he was asking for every dollar he can get. He's not probably going to see a Super Bowl for a long time. We want to see Super Bowls. We want to play with the greatest. We want to say that we played for him, for Andy Reid and with Patrick Mahomes when we were retired, and when we're talking on the, when we're doing our press conferences and when we're analysts on TV, we want to talk about that kind of stuff. And if we're still multimillionaires from this, it's almost that Tom Brady effect, the New England Patriots effect. They didn't pay anybody anything. They were very cheap for the most part.
Yeah, except very few, mostly defensive backs. Stephon Gilmore got paid by the Patriots, but
exactly.
Generally, yeah. But that's also the way you have to do it. You can't
can't.
There's literally there's not enough money, which is my argument why I don't think Thornhill's coming back. Even though I think Thornhill really played well coming up against the end of the year. I just don't know if the money is there for Juan Thornhill to get the money that he quite frankly deserves, because what the Chiefs would be able to offer him is not his value. And I think that you should go get that generational wealth somewhere else. So I would like to see him back in Kansas City. I just don't think it's viable. And generally speaking, when I say a team friendly deal, air quotes, what I mean is, instead of taking every dollar that you can get, take the 80 cents on the dollar type deal. So instead of making, maybe if you hit free agency, you can get $14 million a year. Well, here in Kansas City, we'll offer you $12 million a year. And, you get to stay here in Kansas City, right? Cost of living is lower here in Kansas City and all of that fun stuff. So that's generally what we mean.
You get to make up the difference in Super Bowls and playoff games.
Yeah, and you get to be in what seems like a fun locker room. So yeah. I think the quality of life in terms of the workplace environment definitely seems better here than probably at least 8 other franchises I could think off the top of my head.
If not more. Hey, that's a good segue. What's up, Cheese Live? I have to say this because we talked about it off air. Josh McDaniels is just stupid. I watched one of his press conferences today. I don't know, man. I don't know where he's at, but he said he feels like he's with the Raiders for the long haul no matter what. But he believes that looking at the young talent in our division, especially Herbert, of course, Mahomes, and then other young talent, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, he feels like he can go into the draft, pull out a quarterback that's going to take him to a Super Bowl in the next couple of years. You have to be a good coach, a great coach, and have all... You're not going to find a guy that's going to walk into the NFL out of the draft, especially this draft, and walk directly into a Super Bowl with the organization that you have and the coach that you are. For you to come out and absolutely just blatantly say that is almost arrogant to a degree. This is not a horrible quarterbacks class, but there's been much better over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I would probably put this. It's probably an average quarterback class. Yeah. There's a couple of guys. I know a lot of people are really high on Bryce Young, right? Yeah. There's that guy Will Levis from Kentucky. Yeah, so there are a couple of guys that some people are feeling good about, and I would imagine 3 of them go in the top 10. But I don't think that there's that one. There's no Trevor Lawrence, right? Everybody coming out, everybody was like, Trevor Lawrence is the guy that you're going to pick, right? That was the one that was going 1-1. When Joe Burrow came out, it was like, you're going with, Joe Burrow's the one that you're going with. So yeah. I don't think there's that much universal opinion on any of these guys. No. I think they all have their flaws, but, I mean, what do NFL scouts know, though, right? I mean, they didn't pick Patrick Mahomes first overall. So
very true. I don't know. I just feel like some of the things he says, not really putting any thought into what he says, is really, it's really concerning.
I didn't really understand the hire. Besides, to me, it just seemed like let's go get a Bill Belichick guy. I really thought they should have kept. I really thought they should have kept their interim head coach, because the fact that he drugged that team to playoffs with all the shit that went on 2 years ago. I I think he should have had that job because, well, all of this stuff. I mean, it was not just like one thing that went on. It was
No, it was like 12 things
everything.
that went on.
It was like, yeah, it was like every other week there was this big breaking story coming out of Las Vegas,
Yeah.
involving a player or a person of the organization. So,
all the way up to the GM.
Yeah. So, thank God I'm not a Raiders fan. I think every day I'm not a Raiders fan or Commanders fan, but it's crazy what the Raiders are doing. The worst part about how dysfunctional the Raiders are is that I don't think I can puff my chest out and say the Broncos are going to finish last in the division again. That's probably the worst part about being this bad. Because I find it more entertaining to shit on the Broncos than I do the Raiders, because the Raiders are like that kid. You're like, he's annoying, but like he's not going anywhere. So at a certain point, you just feel bad for making fun of him. But the Broncos are just so arrogant and.
Well, and sadly, the Broncos, it's weird. They went through their phases. In the 90s, they were very arrogant, especially their fan base. Then they kind of dropped off and they weren't as arrogant. Then they got arrogant again with the Peyton Manning situation. The Raiders, their fan base is just horrid. No matter how bad they are, their fan base is just terrible. I mean, if you look at the two worst fan bases in the NFL, it's Philadelphia and it's the Raiders. No matter what city the Raiders are in.
Cowboys.
Oh, no, they're not nearly as bad, dude. No, they're not nearly as bad. I'm telling you, they're dicks. But they're not the level of dick that you get with Raiders and Philly fans. Philly fans will... I mean, honestly, dude, they'll run over their own players if they lose a game.
I ain't throwing no shade at Eagles Nation or whatever the hell you call yourselves. It's not
Fly,
Super Bowl
Eagles,
champion, but...
I don't know. All I know is that they're both hard fan bases to be around. The Raiders are just shit. It's crazy how arrogant and how annoying they can be. And this is going back years. I mean, this is not something that happened overnight. This has been going on forever. It was just a product of Al Davis. But he made them that way. It blew me away, so I had to bring it up because it was like, where is this guy coming from? I don't get it. I think he's actually scared. Because there was a report that came out that Mark Davis said this is a kind of a prove it or lose it year for him. And that's Davis's MO. I mean, it's every couple of years usually. If he wasn't friends with Gruden as long as he was, and Gruden didn't get in that scandal, he'd still be there, probably. And he didn't win he didn't get to a playoff game. So
no, but I feel like the Raiders were... I think the problem with them was nothing to do with Gruden in terms of his coaching. I think that was just on the player side. Like, they just weren't bringing in the right players. I think he had too much control player acquisition, but I definitely feel like they were more competent when he was the head coach. But Josh McDaniels has been the coach for 1 year, so I don't want to jump to conclusions that far. I mean,
look what he's done.
I'll say that the Raiders should have sent the Walmart Corporation many a gift baskets, because with how bad they were, people sort of forgot how bad the Raiders were. I mean, they were blowing leads damn near weekly for the first half of the season.
Yeah. They were talking about the memorabilia sales here, and the merch sales dropped by like 50% in this last year.
Well, that doesn't help that you're no longer in a city that's not your dedicated fan base anymore. So,
yeah, I mean, there's so many different fans of different teams here that it's difficult. But there's a lot of Raiders fans here. A lot of them moved here just to be around the Raiders, which is very strange. But they don't have they're selling stuff in gas stations. Nobody's buying it. Same stuff. It's been hanging there for a while. Moss is starting to chew through it. It's just one of those things. I don't know, man. The Raiders, I just don't see them doing anything for a long time. So
dysfunctional franchises do dysfunctional things, and if there's one thing I have learned about the NFL during my NFL fandom, is that the Raiders are one of the dysfunctional franchises.
They definitely are. His dad had somewhat of a grip on it. Well, to a degree. He had his issues as well, but he had a little better grip on it than his son ever has.
Well, I think Mark Davis has about a grip of on the football team as well as his barber has on a pair of scissors.
Damn Skippy. I think that's a wig. I don't care what anybody says. That's a wig. Nobody in their right mind goes into a barbershop and pays for that haircut. Nobody does that.
He went up, he picked up one of those magazines, and he's like, look at this. Okay. So, you see this bad boy right here? This is what we're going with.
I want the Andy Warhol look. Yeah, nobody does that, man. Nobody does that. But
I need a bowl cut if the bowl was somehow uneven and made my hair thin out. That's what I need.
I don't know, man. He's just a weird guy. But, hey, he got his WNBA team to a championship. That's all that really matters for him. And they're also here. So, anyway, moving on. I just had to throw that out there because it was very... Fizz, what does face green smiling stand for? Do you know what that means? Does anybody... I've seen that like 4 times now. Like different people say it. I don't know what that means. Is that some new thing that I'm too old to know? Do you see that?
I see it.
What does that mean?
I do like the use of the M dash.
Yeah. I wonder if it's supposed to be an emoji and it just didn't come up.
I mean, the fact that I know that is an emoji. I think the fact that it says it and there's colons. I don't know if the comment section like generates that.
It may not. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it just doesn't generate emojis.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, let's see. What else? There was something else I wanted to talk about because it was going around. What was it? We talked about Derek Carr, correct? Yeah, it comes out as words, Thiz, which is weird. Apparently, StreamYard doesn't allow, or
they allow some of the emojis come up, like some of the normal crying face emoji, and those seem to come up.
It's weird.
I guess some of the more random ones don't.
Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. Maybe it may be YouTube for all I know. Which it probably is YouTube. Never thought about that. What are you saying? Yeah, me neither. It's very odd. So we talked about the Derek Carr situation. We talked about the Marcus Mariota situation with everybody in Kansas City's losing their minds thinking he's going to be the next backup. I wanted to get this whole thing out of the way. Please, whatever you guys do this year, every free agent that pops on the market, we do not need. Every year it's the same thing. Go out and get him. Please sign him. Feach, where you at? You got to sign this guy. See his name? His name means something. That name did really well 5 years ago somewhere else. That means absolutely nothing to the Chiefs. We've made this very apparent over the last 5 years. We do not need big name guys, whether it be corners or safeties or whatever. We do not need them. We don't need big name wide receivers. We need guys that will come in and play the game. So all of the armchair coaches and the scouts and the guys at home that wish to God that we were, going to go and give up 4 first-round picks for somebody on another team that we definitely do not need, it's not going to happen. So hang that part up. There's a big rumor going around because of what A.J. Green said at one point about supposedly the Chiefs were going after him. The Chiefs inquired about him. I did check on this again, which Veach does about every player. I actually put it on Twitter. It was basically, hey, I was just wondering what A.J. was asking for. Oh, he wants $120 million for 5 years. Okay, good, thanks. We're just going to go ahead and do it with the rookies and the 3 vets that we have. We're going to win it all with those guys. Because that's how Veach operates. Hang it up with all these big name players.
I think that, first of all, if you're a GM, I think a phone call doesn't hurt anything.
No,
right? So you should be calling. And especially if you're talking to an agent, right? And now, especially during the combine, right? It's combine week. And so all the agents and all the, head coaches and GMs are all in Indianapolis right now. So if you're talking to an agent about one player and then another one is like, hey, this guy, what, hypothetically speaking, what would this guy want? So those conversations are going to continue to happen. And because technically those conversations happen, they get reported on. But this is smokescreen season. This is the opportunity for guys to try and raise their value because certain teams are talking to me. Yeah. So there's any of the reports, any of the that are talking things like that. I don't know how much. Not that I don't believe that though they happen, that there was that report last year that came out that Washington called Kansas City about trading for Patrick Mahomes. Okay. Like that
was actually true though.
They did call. You're right.
Yeah, but it wasn't about Patrick Mahomes.
They
wanted Shane Buechele.
They called every team to inquire about a quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen, right? If you're a GM and you're not making phone calls just to ask questions, then you're not doing your job. So anytime that these come up that like, oh, the Chiefs were asking about this player, I think sometimes they start interesting conversations because you could sort of understand, oh, maybe this guy does fit inside here in Kansas City. But a lot of the times if you're like, what do you mean? It's probably because it came up in one of those kinds of conversations, at least in my thoughts.
Absolutely. I mean, when the whole Washington thing came out, oh, they called about Patrick. That was absolutely not true. They called about Shane Buechele. The Washington, nobody thought we were ever going to trade Mahomes to them. That was a stupid thing for anybody to post. Some idiot on Twitter posted that, and it was not the truth. We found out within about a minute and a half that they were asking about Buechele. So those are the kind of things you just got to stay away from.
They were calling around because they felt sort of screwed because of the Matthew Stafford trade.
Exactly.
At least it seems like, looking back now, it seems like that if they knew Matthew Stafford was on the trade block, they would have made offers to the Lions. So they started last offseason with calling everybody just to make sure that they didn't have a guy that, was being shopped around, but that they didn't know about. So, it sounds stupid on the surface. Like, why are you calling every team? But that's what you should be doing because you don't want to miss out on an opportunity because,
exactly.
the Rams and Lions are in deep negotiations and the Lions don't want to go ask another team because they don't want to blow up what they have with the Rams. But if another team calls them, you're going to tell them what's up.
Well, that's the thing. Veach has called about every fucking free agent since he's been a GM. It's that simple. Just because the man calls and says, hey, can you tell me about him? That doesn't mean he's making an offer for him. Like AJ made it out, oh, he made an offer for me. He never made an offer for him. There was no offer to made. None. Then that turned into, now we're going after D-Hop. Because somebody called to inquire about what A.J. Brown was going to be asking. Now we're going after D-Hop. Nobody said we were going after D-Hop other than 8'10", 6'10". Those are the guys that made this story up. It doesn't mean that at some point we may not sign him, but that's not what's going on right now. So all this convoluted bullshit that is flying all over the place, I understand it's fun to talk about and it's always that cool thing, but to get upset and really pissed off because we didn't sign somebody is insane.
And I'm going to keep reiterating this. I think the Chiefs are going to be very inactive for the free agency. I think there's going to be more guys that end up getting re-signed here in Kansas City. I don't think the Chiefs are making any of quote-unquote splash moves this offseason either. I think that any of the splash moves that they make is going to be re-signing or restructuring players' contracts, and the Chiefs will be very active in the later markets in free agency when they're just trying to fill up roster spots and, build a team. Chiefs have so many draft picks this year that they're pretty much allowed to do what they want in terms of players they want to go get, and I think it's a good opportunity to really shore up what you have and not try and go out and extend your arm. Because if you think about it too, Kansas City is in a really unique spot because they don't have any bad contracts on the roster right now. Like usually you can go through each team and you can look at a contract and say, man, that guy, He is not performing to that contract. I don't know why he was on that. Maybe it was like he signed a 4-year extension and he got hurt and he hasn't been able to perform. Whatever the reason is, Kansas City doesn't have one of those contracts right now, and they're so unique in that, and it's what's allowed them to be so flexible. The Chiefs are in a great situation, and I don't want to see them screw that up just to go make a big move, and I don't think they will.
No, and if anything, they'll do the same thing they've done for the last 3 years, and they'll wait until September when everybody's getting kicked to the curb, the end of September, and they'll go, okay, is there somebody out there we want? Maybe pick one of those guys up.
Yeah.
Which we've done.
Or you end up throwing a 5th-round pick to a team for a guy that doesn't want to be where he is, but you can use him as a rotational piece, a.k.a. Ingram.
Yeah. Or look at, what's his name? He's leaving for the Giants right now. Wide receiver.
Kenny Galladay.
He's another one.
He's made $1 million a catch since he's been a Giant. I think I think he literally has made $41 million as a New York Giant and has caught the ball 41 times, including 6 catches this year.
Yeah.
I think he's made $1 million a reception.
It's insane. And he's, everybody's
more impressive than Chase Daniel.
Well, hell yeah. And everybody says he gets hurt a lot, which he does. But, again, nobody takes into consideration that they don't have the same training. They don't have a good training staff. They don't have a good medical staff. That was proof with Tony. Now it's proof with him. If you don't have a good medical staff, your players are always going to be injured. It was actually almost a proof with Saquon Barkley. I mean, he was injured a lot before the major injury. I don't know. Anyway, we don't need every single player on the market. We can't afford every single player on the market. And always remember that for all these teams that are cutting these guys, they're cutting them for a reason. One, they don't fit within the system, which usually is the case with us especially. Or 2, they're asking for too much money. They can't afford him. If they can't afford him, and they may be in a decent salary cap position, but they want to pay somebody else. Why would we want to bring that on if that's what that player is really pushing for? Now, on the flip side of that, if that player is just doing that to get the hell out of there, which we've seen happen numerous times, players will ask for ignorant money to get out. Kareem Hunt did it. He tried to get $10 million a year out of Cleveland just to get the hell out of there because he wanted out. Don't blame him. I would want out too if I was there. But he didn't get it. No, nobody was going to give him that kind of money. That's been another topic here lately is Kareem Hunt. What's going to happen to Kareem Hunt? We should go back out and get him. It would not hurt my feelings if Kareem Hunt was back. If you had Kareem Hunt, Pacheco, and brought McKinnon back, you got a hell of a backfield. No matter what anybody says.
I would much rather get Deuce Vaughn in the 5th round, but that's just me.
Well, yeah, but if that happens, I mean, that's the type of thing that you got to look at. But I'm still okay with him coming back on a decent contract. He's great out of the backfield. He could teach Pacheco a whole lot. Still got phenomenal moves. Not used a whole lot because, hell, he's been second fiddle to Chubb for 4 years now. 3 years, whatever long it's been. 4 years, I guess. So, I think it's just time to let Veach do what he does because he does it very well. He's proven it year after year after year. So, when he doesn't pick somebody that you guys really want that's a free agent or that may be up for a trade, don't say he sucks. Don't say he needs to be fired. Don't say Andy needs to be fired. Don't say Andy's too old. All the other crap that came out last year and the year before and the year before that. Because, hey man, 3 Super Bowls, 5 years, 2-1. I'm okay with that. What about you?
No, we got to win it every single year.
Every fucking year we got to win.
In fact, we got to win every single game, including all 3 preseason games. If we lose 1 preseason game, I'm out.
How about the fucker? I mean, we went 17-3. We suck. We suck. Everybody's got to go. Everybody's got to go. I mean, that's just the way it is.
You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, they all got
JP wants Patrick Mahomes cut.
Yeah, got to go. He lost 3 games. played on one leg. Fuck him, he's got to go. Anyway,
I've got one more thing I want to talk about, and then I've got nothing more.
Spit it out.
Okay, I want to talk about my latest potential draft pick for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I posted an article a couple days ago about a defensive tackle that the Chiefs can look at. I wasn't even looking at this guy when I found him. I was looking at another player, and I saw him playing for Pittsburgh. And then once you look into him more, it's like, damn, he's good. So it's Pittsburgh's defensive tackle. I think you pronounce his name Kauja Cansey, but I'm not sure. I haven't heard it pronounced, so I'm sorry if I totally fucked over your name. Anyways, so he's a defensive tackle that played on Pittsburgh last year. He's an absolute game wrecker and an athletic freak. He specifically does play defensive tackle for a majority of the snaps, but he has lined up on the outside in that 3 technique on in the defensive end role. So sort of like what Chris Jones does, where every once in a while they'll push him to the outside when he gets good matchups. He's done that too in college, so I think that's good. That's a thing that Spagnuolo likes, right? Guys that can do more than one thing. He has a volume of pass rush moves, and he has already been dealing with double teams, and that's not something that he's going to deal with here in the NFL because he's going to line up next to Chris Jones. And I think that that's something that Kansas City just needs to be able to help. Kansas City needs to give Chris Jones consistent assistance on the inside because there's not another guy on this roster that consistently makes you worry than Chris Jones. If you can get a guy that makes them worried other than Chris Jones on that defensive line, especially at the defensive tackle, where you literally just don't have enough people to double team both of them, that you're going to have to let one of them beat you one-on-one. And I think this is the guy that you can get. Some people have him as the 3rd or 4th best defensive lineman. And I think that if people think that he's the 3rd or 4th best defensive tackle in this draft, I think there's a real good chance he could slide to 31. Or if he's, if it's like the Trent McDuffie thing and he slides to like 24, where I think the Cowboys are picking, I think you could easily give the Cowboys more picks, switch first and add some of your later round picks and to slide down a couple spots to grab him. So he's a beast. It definitely reminds me a lot of Colin Saunders in the athletic ability because there were times he was chasing down quarterbacks and he was chasing them down. He's a big dude, but in terms of, just a regular human being, but he is on the shorter side. And I think that's one of the reasons why he would slide in the round 2. He's only he's only 6 feet tall, 280 pounds. So I think that's one of the reasons why some people knock him is just that he's not big enough to play defensive tackle. I will remind you that Aaron Donald is 6'1", so you don't have to be a
Aaron
great
Donald
player.
weighs 287.
So
actually a little more than that now, but yeah.
I'm just saying that
you
don't have to be 6'8" to play defensive tackle in the NFL. Not that I'm comparing him to Aaron Donald, but I am. There is Colin Saunders is 6 foot, and I wrote that in my article. It's like he's very Colin Saunders-esque.
Yeah,
and he has more pass rush moves than Saunders does as of now. So I think that he's an interesting guy. Read my article about it if you want to learn more. I think there's a real chance. I don't think I'm being crazy when I say that I think he could slide later in the draft because he's a little bit smaller than what some teams will, want. And the Chiefs really need to add consistent assistance to him at the nose tackle spot.
I haven't seen him play. I haven't looked at him much. But I will take your word for it. It sounds like a beast. I've heard his name numerous times. I just haven't seen enough of his game to know more about him. I can't say that for sure. I like that offensive lineman too. You actually brought him up, and then I went and looked at his film.
DeWand Jones.
Holy shit!
I think is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's his name. God.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. We could end up with that dude. Lord. If we can somehow pull him. Oh my God.
It was funny. So I put that. That was the first person that I was like scouting and looking at. Right, was the right tackle, and then a couple of days later, I put out the article about this guy, and I'll have another one. I'll have a different player coming out tomorrow. And somebody in the comments on Twitter asked when I put out the one about the defensive tackle, they said, no, I think we need an offensive tackle. So what I did is that when I went to reply, I replied to his comment because I either like the comments that I see or I reply to them so people know that I saw them because I like interacting with people.
Mm-hmm.
I just put the link to the other article with Dwan Jones, and I was like, here you go.
Yeah, that dude, he's got like an 8-foot wingspan.
He's 6'8" and is got like I can't remember. It's like 7.5 foot wingspan. And you see it on his film where sometimes he'll lose, but because he's literally just so big, like defensive linemen can't fully get around him. When they try and do those outside speed moves on him, they can't fully get around him because even when they beat him, he can just stick his arm out and slow guys down, and the quarterback's gotten rid of the ball.
Yeah,
so
I noticed that.
He has a bigger room for error. He has more room for error just because he's so big and is able to recover from that. And once again, because he played right tackle and not left tackle, I think that he's going to slide in the draft. I'm trying to look for guys. Everybody knows about the Georgia defensive linemen and the top 4 quarterbacks. I'm trying to find guys that may have issues that other teams may stray away from. But guys, if you just sit there and look at it and you're just like, I think he can be a player in the NFL. And those 2 guys that I've written about, I do think that while obviously the Chiefs aren't going to get both of them, if they were to get one of those 2, I think you can call day 1 a success.
Yeah, definitely a win. And that's that's Veach's philosophy. He goes after the guys that nobody else wants. And we make success stories out of him.
Yeah, a guy that Plus, the Chiefs to me need a right tackle now more than they do a left tackle because you have the left tackles on your roster. You're tagging Brown, so currently you don't have your right tackle on the roster. And if you can get your right tackle then solidified, then it makes playing Brown under the franchise tag for 1 year easier. Because you know that in the next season, you aren't going to have to replace your right tackle and your left tackle. You'll just have to replace your left tackle, hypothetically.
Exactly.
And so you aren't making huge adjustments to your offensive line all at once. You're sort of working, okay, this year I need this, then next year I need this, and you're only making minor changes to the line instead of trying to do it all at once because, it's really difficult to completely redo your offensive line.
Although we did it and did a pretty damn good job.
We did it and we did a pretty good job. You're right, but it's not something
it's not
that
easy
you want
to do
replicate.
all the time. That's for sure.
And then I don't want to say we got lucky because Brett Veach and his team do such a great job, but the cards had to fall just right to get the guys that we did, right? Like Trey Smith. I think if it's a non-COVID year draft, I think he ends up sliding up because I think more teams will be able to,
get some eyes on him.
That's a whole other discussion, I guess.
Definitely. Well,
so go check out that article. Check out that guy. I think if you see some of the stuff that he does, Chiefs fans would be excited about getting him. And I've got another guy coming out too that I think would be interested. I'm trying to find some other guys that may not be first-round picks that might fall later in the rounds, but it's hard to come across guys that later in the rounds that I think the Chiefs will snatch up.
And don't be surprised if Veach doesn't sell. I mean, we got 11 picks now?
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if Veach doesn't sell off a few of those picks to jump up.
I think that's a real possibility because, the Cowboys are at 24, and I think the Vikings are like 20. What are they? Are they like 25 or something? Like, you've got a couple of teams that are in the early 20s that
Vikings, I think are 27 maybe or up there because I think they were 27. I could be wrong, but I think they're
those sort of teams are the teams that you can move up to because you're talking about moving less than 10 spots later in the first round. So it's not going to cost you that much. Maybe you have to get rid of one of your third round picks or maybe like a third and a fifth. You're not giving up a massive haul for them, but you're going to get a player that is going to be able to play now. And that's more valuable to Kansas City than just trying to get an abundance of picks at this point because that's why you get your abundance of picks is so that you can get more flexibility, and getting those sort of players is, what the draft is for.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we have a show starting next Wednesday. It's going to be on every Wednesday at a certain time. I've yet to think. I think we've got the time worked out, but I want to make sure before I say anything. New look, new things in general. We're still going to have this show, but we're also going to have another show that we're going to be on we're going to do every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Time. So make sure you check it out. It's going to be really cool. Got some pretty cool sponsors. Got some pretty cool stuff coming along with it. Working with a company that I actually was on their show a few times, and they've got a fairly large company that they asked if we wanted to do a show under their umbrella. We decided to do it. So check it out. It's going to be every Wednesday, I believe 8 o'clock Central Time. And we're still going to do our regular shows as well, but we're going to have a bunch of new graphics, a bunch of new stuff. We're going to have guests on. We're going to have all kinds of stuff going on. So, with that being said, we appreciate everybody for joining, and we will talk to you again on Thursday or Sunday, Quentin.
Well, we'll do Thursday.
Yeah, we'll do Thursday. We will talk to you guys again on Thursday. Peace out, everybody.